PayPal and Visa share new crypto updates as Bitcoin wraps up its best performing September in over a decade. We cover all this right now in the Collective Shift Weekly Recap. Actionable insights and a breakdown into the crypto market, all in under 30 minutes. Nick, how are you this week?
Yeah, really good. As you mentioned, September, finally a good month in crypto. Hopefully that isn't a reflection that historically the Q4, which is meant to be good, will be negative. But I think all hangs on the election. We've got a lot to talk about with Harris making some pro-crypto comments. But the one thing that caught my eye was the market. China, huge stimulus and a lot of ETF inflow information as always.
Yeah, for sure. Getting it up on my screen now, we can see, a positive week for Bitcoin, up slightly. Some of the other majors are flat. Solana up about 7%, XRP up 12%. So I think the most promising thing was to see prices holding steady after quite a bit of a rally in the middle of September. So that's great to see. And that's all sort of stemming back from the rate cuts, as we talked about last week, and the expectation of more rate cuts going into the end of the year and also into 2025. But other highlights from the past week in terms of the market, we also saw ETFs actually, the Bitcoin ETFs at least, hitting their strongest week since the middle of July. So by strongest week, it's just the net inflows. So $1.1 billion worth of, demand for these products as a net. So factoring in the outflows there as well. So really positive to see, and that all just leads to more demand for Bitcoin ultimately, especially if you see that, week after week. We also saw another highlight, is absolutely worth mentioning, is, as you said, Nick, China's new stimulus package that they shared to try to, as the name implies, stimulate the economy, and they've really been underwhelming in terms of their GDP or just their economic growth for the past, ever since COVID really, where a lot of people expect them to bounce back stronger. That hasn't happened. They've got a lot of other issues with the retail market, real estate market and whatnot. So this stimulus package ultimately can help bolster the M2 supply. And given it is the second largest economy as well, just anything that's really stimulatory from a country as large as China can only have great effects for risk assets such as cryptocurrency. So definitely worth keeping in mind there. But it's not only crypto that is performing well recently. Stocks are, a lot of the major indexes are around all-time highs, particularly in the US, and a lot of commodities doing well. And as I get up on my screen here, gold has been just hitting all-time highs repetitively quite recently. And for those who don't really follow the gold market too closely, you may be surprised to know that it's up, not just 6% in the past month, but it's also up 40% over the past 12 months, which did surprise me. It's been a while since I've sort of checked in on it. So story is that all asset prices seem to be going up recently. And again, heading into Q4, historically a really strong time for crypto. So we'll see if that continues now that we're into October. But I think the biggest factor heading into Q4's performance will be the election, as you said, Nick. And we've got some updates on Harris. Finally has said something about crypto.
Yeah, she finally talked about crypto, but not actually outright talking about cryptocurrency. She referred to it as digital assets and talked a lot about remaining dominant in blockchain and other emerging technologies. This was kind of a bit more of her actual policies and a bit more of how she's going to tackle the economy in the last week or so. She was revealing a few more details, but still very light in terms of any concrete policies and any statements beyond any kind of fluff that she may want to appear on side to the crypto crowd. I know Biden previously said that he was going to open up or had some very similar rhetoric around cryptocurrency and blockchain in the past, but we've all seen what the reaction is like for the Biden administration to cryptocurrency and the SEC. It's been extremely hostile, as you will already have known. We've talked about this time after time on the pod, but I was happy to see some kind of movement on Harris's front. I think Uniswap's creator, Hayden Adams, he said that at least it's a step in the right direction. But for me, still leaves a lot to be desired, really. And hopefully we can get some sort of concrete policies out of her. If not, we're heading into about a month now into the election, into next week. So, if we don't hear anything until then, I really doubt we're going to see anything concrete from Harris out of this election. And she still, I think, is ahead a few points in the polls.
Yeah, agreed. Well summarised there, Nick, and agreed on all points. So we'll see in the next, before I think November 5th or so, it is the election. We'll see if anything comes out from Harris's team. But in the meantime, we've got the SEC sort of still wrapping things up. As we said, the fiscal year in the US goes up to September 30. So we said that there would likely be more sort of just legal or regulatory updates in the month of September, more closing and more announcements of settlements with various projects, with the SEC trying to then get its budget in for next year. So that's what we saw in the past week. Yet another example of a firm sort of settling. I think there was, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there was one more last week. I think we talked about Rari Capital as well recently, in addition to that. And I think eToro US also settled as well. But the SEC also has been active wrapping up the year in terms of their hearings, in terms of Congress. So ultimately, Congress is their boss in a roundabout way, the SEC. And it's important to have these hearings every year or so, particularly because that's the only really way we get a chance to hear much about like their policies and how their attitudes towards crypto. And we get more, I guess, lawmakers and whatnot having to ask them about, their decisions they've made in the past year, which, as we've talked about on this podcast a lot, have been quite contentious, to say the least. And, the story here in terms of what happened last week was similar to what we've seen in the past, but I would say it's up another notch in terms of lawmakers being quite critical of Chair Gary Gensler. There was also other SEC representatives there. I think the whole team was there, actually, all 5 of them last week. But Gensler, was grilled by certain lawmakers, which he has been in the past, but I would say, it was up a notch. So what's really the takeaway? I think it's clear, if it's beyond like a reasonable doubt now, that if Republicans win, he'll be gone. There was also rumors that if Harris wins, he may also be gone from his role at the SEC. That's just all, we won't know until it happens, really. But we also have just other team members from the SEC, other commissioners who are also just getting more comfortable in disagreeing with Gensler. So what's all this really mean for you out there investing in crypto and whatnot? As we've talked about many times, the outcomes of what the SEC does or does not do, and more importantly, what the US government and lawmakers do and do not do, will heavily sway and affect how large the crypto market can get, and just how much of an impact, in our opinion, like blockchain technology can have on society. It's whether or not they open it up or whether they keep it sort of quite heavily regulated, and therefore all the other countries need to sort of have this hodgepodge sort of crypto industry moving forward. So was there anything else to add there, Nick?
So two out of the 5 commissioners actually dissent quite regularly on things from NFTs to other digital assets. So it's kind of this really pivotal point for Gensler, is that he's the chair and he's often the deciding vote in a lot of circumstances. So that's just why it's so important. And especially if, maybe he is removed and you get a more favorable SEC, then this is probably better for altcoins and you can get some actual clarity, and tokens can actually start accruing some value, because at the moment we live in this weird alternative reality world where if you actually assign value to tokens in the US, then it's actually bad for you. So you actually incentivize not to and not provide value, which is then counterproductive to what they actually want to achieve and protect consumers. So it's, this is why it's just so important. And hopefully after the election, we can get some good clarity on exactly where the SEC stands and whether the US is actually going to open up and welcome crypto companies back into the US.
Yeah, well said. In terms of adoption in the past week, we saw some really high-profile names coming out and sharing, what's next for their works that have already been ongoing for many years now in terms of their blockchain and crypto efforts. We've got Visa here coming out with another update. You've got this one, Nick.
Yeah, I'm always continually really excited at big names like Visa that are talking about tokenization. Even things that a lot of people may not see, whether they're working in the background in supporting a lot of crypto payments or a lot of Web3 businesses. Well, this is a next step further. They come out and said that they're launching a tokenized asset platform to help banks issue fiat-backed tokens, and they specifically called out Ethereum there, that will start live pilots in about 2025, so sometime next year. I didn't see any hard date, but putting this one up to next year. But for me, the big takeaway is that it's a further sign of really sustained interest in crypto, especially by a lot of leading fintech companies. We saw Stripe support crypto payments, and now we're seeing even the likes of MasterCard do a lot of research into trying to access tokenized deposits and support a lot of like blockchain software and analytics. Now we're seeing Visa take that next step further and actually look to build and help in the realm of real world assets and tokenization. So huge moment here, and we all know that it builds on further stuff that Visa has been doing, and they've been testing stablecoin settlement on Ethereum and on Solana. This has been happening in the last couple of years. So Visa continually to just make new waves into crypto, and probably really underappreciated by the market. I didn't see this talked about tons really. Maybe the election's garnering a lot of the attention. Breakpoint was everyone's focus, a lot of crypto conferences, but we're really missing the big key takeaway here. Visa, huge fintech firm, they're starting to get and dive their toes deeper into crypto. I know PayPal also, Matt, has recently come out with another big announcement too. Do you have any more insight on that one?
Yeah, from one big name to another in the world of sort of, well, fintech really. And the PayPal has again expanded or taking another step further into crypto. Already, big milestones in recent years. Most notably, or recently, the stablecoin that they have is really climbed into the top 100. I saw on CoinGecko the other day in terms of overall market cap. However, PayPal is here announcing that it is now going to enable US merchants to buy, hold, and sell cryptocurrency from their business accounts. And a nice detail here is that this was also sort of spurred on by, in PayPal's words, they said that this was spurred on by business owners sort of demanding that this feature was enabled. So yeah, not just something that the powers that be at PayPal are just at a whim sort of deciding and hoping that it goes well. This should, if what those clients are demanding turns out to be users in the future, this should be a nice product for PayPal, and again, just making it more accessible for people overall. Really is the ultimate takeaway there. More accessible for people to get involved in crypto.
I just have a quick question here, Matt. If you were to be told, even back when you first got into the space, and that you have Visa doing tokenization platform, now we got BlackRock's ETFs, we got all these huge names really entering crypto. Do you think we're kind of null to this now? Big names like Visa, that's not having maybe the impact that it would have a couple of years ago, really, if such a headline hit, the news outlets.
Yeah, definitely like a desensitization sort of as the years have gone by. I think with a bigger asset class now, it doesn't have as much of that star factor, which is what you want to see, really, I suppose. But you can sort of get lost in maybe thinking there's not as much progress as what there otherwise is, because when you do see the big names, then I think the most, thing that excites me the most is that these names are continuing to go further into crypto. As we've been saying, they've been already involved in this space for a number of years now, and now they're even announcing in middle of 2024 even more products that they're going into. So it's always a very methodical, steady, progress for these big banks and even the financial institutions. And to see them continuing to go in is really encouraging. Otherwise, the opposite, would be very discouraging. So yeah, great to see this, and we have come quite a long way. And moving on to probably another even big name, just to wrap up sort of the adoption news. We have BNY Mellon, Nick, coming out with an announcement last week.
BNY Mellon there, if you're not familiar with them, they're probably one of America's oldest bank, if not the oldest. They got an exemption to hold crypto assets and crypto custody on behalf of their customers. It's such a big deal because currently, as a general rule, something called SAB 121 means that a lot of these big banks and providers, they actually cannot really practically handle cryptocurrency on behalf of their customers, because essentially you got to put it down as a liability, and this makes it nearly impossible to actually do it properly. Now, this is really controversial because it was actually passed through, I think, the House via Congress to remove this rule that was installed by the SEC. But this was actually vetoed by President Biden because what everyone wants, I think, is any bank in the US to actually custody and house your crypto assets. So huge deal here that there's actually giving exemptions to this rule. And, BNY Mellon, the biggest bank, one of the oldest banks in America, they've one of the first to get this exemption. So it's a positive news in that we're seeing some big banks able to skirt this rule that was created. But then it also creates a really toxic environment of, choosing winners and only allowing maybe the most established banks to do this practice, where in reality, we need all banks to really support crypto custody. So this is the one that I've really continued to look forward to, even here in Australia, because for a lot of people, writing down a seed phrase, recovery phrase, having a ledger is just so impossible that no one wants to do it. And for a lot of people, just being able to send your Bitcoin to your bank or your established provider is the way to go. And this is kind of showing the way forward. And I think 2025 is probably going to be the year really where we see a lot of this start to become a reality. And that's one of my top signals that I'm looking for is, when you got your Bank of America is able to directly take on your Bitcoin, that's a huge deal. And I think it can't be underestimated enough. So hopefully we start to see this exemption provided to more people, and even a removal if we get a pro-crypto government after the election. Then we'll be able to see this a lot more banks custody crypto assets, which would only be positive as a whole.
Yeah, that would be the dream. Well, hopefully we'll see what happens after the election in particular, and moving forward if there's more pressure to get rid of SAB 121. Onto the altcoins, there was a number of big updates in the past week. We know we're right in the middle of conference season at the moment, so expect those altcoin announcements to continue. I think we went through a list of a lot of them in the most recent newsletter as well, for anyone interested. But off the top of the list, we have Celestia, and the foundation sort of, pioneering or steering the ship there for Celestia as it gets up and going and ultimately tries to become as decentralized as possible. They raised 100 million in funding from different venture capital firms, and notably here a lot of repeat investors from the early days of the Celestia Foundation, or the name it was prior to that being founded, which was encouraging to see. One thing I think in these reports, as we were talking about earlier, Nick, that you don't often see, it's a bit frustrating in a sense. You would love to see some more transparency in terms of the terms of these funding rounds, because presumably Celestia Foundation has taken some of their R&D or research and development allocation and sold those TIA tokens onto these investors. And presumably that was at a discount to the market rate of TIA, and I would be expecting there to be some sort of lockup. Unfortunately, we don't really have any of that information. However, we do have some of the investors realized or I guess shared there on your screen that you can see. But that brings the total funding for Celestia up to 155 million. But yeah, having 100 million just in fresh, I guess, cash for the foundation should really accelerate, I guess, their hiring abilities and their abilities to really execute on their technical roadmap, which Celestia did release rather recently. That's quite an ambitious roadmap when you compare it to other sort of blockchains out there. They're sort of, I guess, really wanting to hone down on their data availability, and we've sort of reported on this recently for members in a lot more detail than that. So it comes at a time when Celestia has also pushed out their Lemongrass upgrade, which is their first upgrade since Celestia launched on mainnet. I believe it was in the second half of last year. So a lot going on for Celestia at the moment, which is unsurprising given it's around the time of their first token unlock. So that is 12 months after the token generation event. In the case of Celestia, it's different for every project, but October 31st will be the time of TIA's, I guess, 1 year cliff. So you can often see a lot of project updates around that time to sort of help, I guess, spur some demand, because there's a lot of tokens for Celestia in this case that are going to come into the market very soon, and presumably a lot of sell pressure in the short term. So on to the next one here, Nick. We've got Polymarket.
So Polymarket were the biggest name in prediction markets and probably the most successful crypto app at the moment. They're looking to raise, I think, another big round. They've had a few in the last 12 months, but I think just how capital intensive prediction markets are, they're looking to try and raise some more. But the thing that's really stood out for me was, hey, there's rumors swirling that they may get a token. So this is one that I probably didn't see tokenizing because I'm not sure how it fits in their platform really, but I think they're actually going to be incentivized or have to issue a token because it really gives me vibes from the NFT boom when we saw OpenSea have such a dominant market position in catering for a need, but they really didn't tokenize. They're a bit slow, but then they got really outpaced and attacked by NFT open, marketplaces that issue tokens that incentivize the users. So is this what we're going to see with Polymarket, and is this why they may have to issue a token? I think it could be. We saw DYDX this week. They actually shared plans to make a perpetual futures on prediction markets. And then we saw big market makers like Wintermute talk about offering prediction markets themselves, and competition from Drift, which is a Solana-based, originally it was sort of a DeFi application, but now they're starting to look into prediction markets and supporting that. They recently launched their election markets in the last month or so. And then Keishi, which is positioning themselves as the most compliant prediction market in the US, has also launched and generating some quite a lot of traction. So we're seeing a lot of competition in the prediction market space, and really makes me think that, hey, Polymarket actually may have to issue a token here to stave off these competitors and to attain their users into the platform.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nick. And a very unique dynamic here in crypto when you're trying to grow a business at the end of the day, or something like a business, but that Polymarket still is, but do you then have to get in on the token game because of these existing competitors that are now eating into your market share, presumably? So yeah, great analogy there to OpenSea as well. So we'll track that closely. Eigenlayer is another one that we have a big update on, or just a big in the sense it's important and good enough to meet our altcoin segment for this week. And that is big because September 30 is when the token finally becomes transferable. So presumably there'll be some exchange listings this week. I would be surprised if there wasn't. So September 30, Eigen tokens will be able to be withdrawn and moved around, really, as the name implies there. So a lot of reasons why that is a significant moment. And in many other ways, it's sort of it's like another day for, I guess, the passionate Eigen users. But for a lot of people who have been waiting to sell their tokens, they can now do so, I would say, in early October. And as always, look out for scams around the time of any big news around tokens, which this is a great example of one where I would be expecting to see a lot of scams.
Good one there, Matt. And maybe going to let our members know exactly what your Eigen plans are. I know maybe we've got some content in the works there. Finally, the final altcoin thing that took my eye this week was Athena. They're launching a new stablecoin, USTB, and this is backed by BlackRock's tokenized US Treasuries fund that got going a few months ago now and generated probably the biggest real world asset and treasury management fund in the crypto space. So it's achieved this only, I think, 5 or so months, which has been huge. And now we're seeing wider adoption by the likes of Athena, which is trying to create a real on-chain kind of internet bond sort of thing. So
yeah, you could even count that as yet another sign of adoption, Nick, with BlackRock. As the list goes on, another week, another news coming out of BlackRock there with their adoption of BUIDL. So yeah, a lot going on in altcoins. As always, there'll be more conferences coming up in the next few weeks, of course. But before then, we'll get to one of our favorite segments as well in terms of things we're looking forward to. Just one we have this week is to just keep an eye out for Uniswap V4. I think it's becoming increasingly likely that it will be dropping or being released in the middle of October, according to a tweet here that we might link to in the show notes. And a screenshot there of it looking like it'll be October 16th. So nothing confirmed here. It's a tentative date, but it would be in line with the Uniswap Foundation, who had communicated that Q4 was the most likely time that V4 will be announced. And we've explained many times why V4 is such a big deal. A lot more of a significant impact, I think, on DeFi that I'm expecting compared to V3, and we've explained why many times before. So yeah, look out for that. But before then, and before we wrap things up for this week, we will get into our segment of overappreciated or underappreciated. And Nick, I'll get you to kick things off.
Yeah, I continually think the real world asset market is probably underappreciated, especially securitized. So I was actually doing some digging on the weekend, just looking into real world tokenization of equities markets, because I do like to indulge into stocks myself as well, and I'm really surprised and maybe even shocked at the lack of unison in the space to really use crypto as a huge use case for this. And this is really showing well and beyond outside of stablecoins why blockchains and crypto matter. So Securitize have actually been working on putting some equities onto the blockchain and enabling the buying and selling of these. So really excited to see. And some of these settle, I think, to Ethereum and then to Avalanche. So these small little real world adoption of real businesses that are looking to securitize, who are using Ethereum and Avalanche to issue and sell their secondhand equity markets is huge. And I continually need to think about this when I use my traditional stock brokerage account. Things take 2-3 days to settle. Your money takes a while to hit the account. It's actually not a great experience. And I would argue crypto experience of being able to do that on chain would be by and far, a million times better. And I'm really excited for this use case to finally come to market. And hopefully we see that in the next couple of months, and even seeing things like the Guggenheim, I think some asset managers and treasury managers securities, they come out and said that they're issuing about 20 million worth of tokenized commercial paper on Ethereum. So this is really positive news, and Ethereum out of the limelight, but I think it's something like, more than 70% of real world assets are settled to Ethereum. And so although Asana's getting a lot of attention, Sui's now gaining it, Ethereum beaten down, but we're starting to see real positive announcements like Guggenheim here issuing on Ethereum.
Yeah, good shout out there. A nice find. Next one we have, last one from me. I'm going to go overappreciated this week. And we definitely told members about this recently, but this is just anything to do with the FTX distributions that you see this week and even in the coming weeks. Definitely just take it with a grain of salt. If they are claiming that $16 billion is coming back into the market, that's just not true. And there's no concrete figures here, but I've got some up on my screen that is more estimates, but I think I've always said that I would be shocked if even half of this $16 billion figure came into the crypto market. I would think it's much more likely to be 3 to 5 billion comes back into cryptocurrencies. And again, you've got to know that that's over, potentially even multiple years, knowing how long bankruptcies can be delayed, like what we saw with Mt. Gox, which was, I guess, particularly a complex one. But still, even in this scenario, you've got to be prepared that these things get delayed. But even I think it may start at the end of this quarter, drip feeding through. And then we've got other classes of the bankruptcy that need to then be, I guess, redistributed to. And again, as we've explained many other reasons why this won't be 16 billion, the equivalent to it. But I guess the big takeaway here is this is an overrated piece of news that you may see circulating around Twitter and whatnot. Yes, there's reasons to be bullish about crypto heading into Q4. This is slightly one of them, but it's nowhere near as bullish of a factor as what many are making it out to be. Alrighty, that will do us for this week. And I can't believe we're actually, heading into October. So that means we're under 40 days from the election, and that will sort of, again, dictate the outlook for Q4. So heading into that, we may see some hints at other blockchain policies and whatnot. But of course, we'll keep you posted on anything that's happening. And also the newsletter will do a job of keeping you up to date as well. So you can subscribe to that for free over at our website, and you can get that every Friday. So the link to go to is collectiveshift.io/newsletter. That's collectiveshift.io/newsletter.